Welcome to another episode of Steal Our Winners. Today we have a return contributor, a man that needs no introduction in the world of copywriting. His name is David Deutsch. He is truly one of the few A-level copywriters out there. Started at Ogilvy, made the transition from Madison Avenue to direct response many moons ago. He has since sold over $1 billion in sales for many companies, from small entrepreneurs to companies like Agora to companies like Procter & Gamble. Nowadays, he still writes some copy, but spends most of his time coaching other copywriters, copywriting teams, and entrepreneurs who also write their own copy for their own businesses. And truly a legend and someone who I am very thankful to call a friend. Welcome back, Mr. David Deutsch.
Well, thank you, Rich. It's great to be back with you.
Very cool. So what are we going to cover today? And what are subscribers going to know who watch this episode? What are they going to know by the time we're done that they don't know now? And what are they going to be able to do that they might not be able to do now?
Well, I'm going to give them a framework for looking at copy. Because I think people these days get really caught up in the words, right? What words do I need to put on the page? What technique do I use? You know, AI is going to make the words for me. It spits out words. And I think we're largely getting away from looking at copy in terms of what really does make good copy. And it's not, it's not necessarily the words, right? It's what's behind that. It's what's being promised and how believable it is. So today we're going to look at what I call a magic square, which is a matrix for seeing what square the copy fits into and where you want it to get to.
Okay, cool. So where should we start with that?
So I'm going to try to grab the screen here.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to look at the magic square, how to instantly transform weak copy into winning copy. And this square is divided into 4 quadrants. You've got promise going up from bottom to top, benefit, how much you're promising, how juicy those promises are. And then you've got believability going to the right. So if you've got a good amount of promise and you've got a good amount of believability, you're in the upper right quadrant, which is sold, right? That's, that's the place where you want to be. Trouble is that sometimes people have a lot of promise, you can see going up this way, but not a lot of believability. So you wind up in the hype quadrant, where you would want to add proof. Then sometimes you have a lot of believability, a lot of trust. People believe what you say, but your promises aren't powerful enough. So that's where who cares, right? People don't really care. They're not motivated. They're still not motivated to buy. And of course, the worst case scenario, you don't have a lot of promise and you don't have a lot of believability, right? So basically, there's 2 things you need to do, right? You can either increase promise, increase believability, or both in order to get into that upper right-hand quadrant. So let's look at increasing what I call promise, right? Most people, what they do is they just shout louder, right? These are killer, amazing, incredible, unbelievable. They just pile on a long list of benefits. Now, it's good to have a lot of benefits,
Right.
But what you also want to, it's important that those benefits be relevant to the prospect, right? That's what gets you up in that, to that top quadrant there. You want to make it really clear how these benefits help them achieve their deepest hopes, help them avoid their deepest fears. And then you want to make sure the benefits are relevant to the roles that they want to play in life, right? You'll be a hero to your loved ones kind of thing. You'll be the boss everyone admires if you do this. So let's see. The next thing in the benefits is how do you increase the impact, right? Because you could have benefits that are relevant. You could have benefits that, offer a lot, but they just don't have impact. They don't make an impression on the reader. They don't stand out. They don't get attention. So how do you make existing benefits more vivid? Well, you have to get prospects to see those benefits, right? To experience them, to feel them. This is the way I kind of brought to life the benefit of lowering your cholesterol, right? 5 ways to lower your cholesterol as easily as lowering the thermostat, but without drugs or tofu. So it was another way of just saying lower your cholesterol, but it brought it to life. And that's what you want to do with your benefits. Eat these tiny, tasty seeds to flush away fat forever. Again, a way to bring it to life, to make it new, to get people's attention. A technique that I use a lot is simply buy, right? Because a benefit which is kind of ordinary, if you add simply buy and show how shockingly easy it is to do, that brings that benefit to another level. Like how to get the job of your dreams, right? That's a pretty ordinary benefit. But by saying simply by adding this sentence to your resume, that's all of a sudden it's got more impact now. This is something I used. Her diarrhea agony ended with this delicious cookie cure. So it's kind of implied simply by, right? Ending diarrhea simply by eating a cookie. Like who wouldn't want to eat a cookie to feel better? Simply by opening your refrigerator. Delicious paint erasers that await you right in your kitchen. And similarly, even, right? Makes a benefit that's almost amazing. Reverse stroke damage, even up to 5 years afterwards, right? So you've taken a benefit, which is kind of ordinary, reverse stroke damage, but then by adding even up to 5 years later, all of a sudden it takes it to a different level. Groundbreaking new medical research has uncovered powerful nutrients that can actually reverse diabetes and even undo its life-threatening complications. So that reversal thing, the reversing of the complications, just is kind of the little kicker that takes that benefit over the line. And then adding without, right? That you can get this benefit without having to do the things that you usually have to do to get the benefit, like losing weight without dieting and without exercising, right? How to make money in real estate without buying any real estate. Whoa, how do I do that? That's interesting. Get stores and hotels to lower their prices without haggling. So you're kind of like mind reading a little bit, right? Someone reads a benefit and it says, how do you get stores and hotels to lower their prices? They kind of go, well, I don't know. I bet that means I have to haggle. I bet that means I have to negotiate. And I don't want to do that. So just by adding that without haggling, you're kind of overcoming that little objection in their head. Here's an implied without. How Warren Buffett wins big by keeping money out of the stock market, right? So he wins big kind of without investing, without putting money in the stock market. The other thing that I think people fail to do is to add emotion to benefits, right? It's like, oh, you get this, reduced to this, make money with this, but there's no emotional impact. And emotion is what gives, as you know, is what gives writing impact. So falling behind on saving, make up for lost time with the catch up quick retirement plan. So you're playing on that emotion that people have of, God, I feel bad, right? I forgot to save for my retirement. And the relief that they feel of, wow, I can now make up for that lost time. Adding drama is huge, right? How do you create drama? People love drama. They watch Netflix shows, right? Binge on them endlessly for hours at a time. So you want to add a little drama to your benefits where you can. This was a spice that could actually heal wounds. And I dug up this story of a farmer that actually used it to heal his son's accidental gunshot wound. Farmer shocked stocks by healing his son's gunshot wound with a kitchen spice. and then digging for hidden benefits, right? Sometimes there are benefits that are kind of below the level, right? Of, okay, this particular thing, it was good for arthritis. But when I dug into the research a little bit, I found that the research in terms of, yes, the research showed that it worked, and the results were a little bit better for people whose arthritis was a little more severe. So I was able to take that and turn it into the worse shape your joints are in, the better this amazing arthritis discovery works. Okay, so you've got the proof. You've got the promise. We've seen how to kind of up the promise level. So let's look a little bit about how to up the believability level. Adding more different types of proof, and we're going to look at some different types of proof. But of course, there are, you want to prove as much as you can, right? You want to prove, if you want to look at every statement, every assertion, every fact that you make and say, would it be helpful if I proved this, right? Like you say, hey, your brain needs more oxygen than any other part of your body, according to a Harvard medical study, because you've got some supplement or some way of getting more oxygen to the brain, right? Mm-hmm. And you just want to say your brain needs more oxygen than any other part of your body. But if you can add, according to a Harvard medical school study, now you're starting to become a credible source, right? It's like, oh, this person kind of proves things. This person states things that are, provably factual. You obviously don't want to do that for every fact, but the more you can do it, the more you take on that aura of credibility. So, of course, the basic ways of proving things, right? There's studies, there's research, there's testing results, there's track record. All of these things are, can be proof elements. And then, of course, one of the best proof, there's social proof, right? Other people are doing it. I should be doing it. There's testimonials, there's endorsements, media and authority quotes and mentions. Where has it been seen or used, right? As seen on TV. Something I use a lot, or something like it was used at Harvard. I really like historical proof because it's always interesting to tell historical stories about how something was used in ancient Greece or, used in the Bible or something, right? That gives things a lot of credibility that it was used in the distant past and its use has survived until now. And then, of course, the bandwagon approach, who else uses it? Thousands are enjoying it. Like thousands of women already have, you'll soon be experiencing these benefits. Little more advanced types of proof, of course, to show it, right? Seeing is believing. So you want to demonstrate where you can, right? Visually with photos, charts, graphs, but also even in words, you can, Gene Schwartz was a master of this, right? Where you just describe, like, take this, additive, pour it into your tank and notice, the change in your engine's performance, right? So he kind of like painted the picture of demonstrating something in words. And you can do that too in your copy. Proving the parts. In other words, you prove the whole by proving the parts. We do this a lot with supplements, right? We may not have proof that this supplement, works. We may not have, testing, but we may have testing that these ingredients work. This particular primary ingredient has been known to work. So there's proof of the ingredients. There's proof of the concept behind it, the people behind it. For example, the theory behind this investment newsletter won the Nobel Prize, right? That's a great, form of proof for the newsletter. You want to use logic, right? If A is true and B is true, then C must be true. And, I advise studying argumentation, right? Seeing what the elements of a good argument are. Because a lot of times, I read people's copy when I coach them. And the first thing I notice is that their logic is not only not airtight, it's not even, logical, right? It's just sort of wandering around and they haven't really proven what they think they've proven.
Right.
You want to appeal to common sense. This is a really underutilized proof element, right? It's like when you say, hey, you know how it is like you put oil in your car? Well, your joints also need oil. They need to be lubricated. And that's why this supplement, that lubricates your joints is so powerful, right? You've linked it to something they know about. Doesn't it make sense that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take care of your car, you should take care of your body. Comparisons. You always want to think about, what can I compare this to, right? Look, compared to this, you can obviously see that this is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even comparing the price, right? Less than the price of a cup of coffee per day. I love this little bit of implied proof here that they use on infomercials. If operators are busy, please keep calling. Right?
Right.
Seems to be just a way to say, look, if operators are busy, we don't want to lose you. But it's also a way to say, hey, people want this thing because it really works. You see, in weight loss, kind of an implied presupposition proof could be, don't take too much. You could lose weight too fast. Right? Mm-hmm. For diabetes, talk to your doctor before you take this. You may need less medication. Specificity is a proof element, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, who would make that up, right? When you have an exact figure. So for this, I did mushroom extract makes radiation therapy work up to 4 times better, right? That's one little bit of specificity. And then supercharges chemo 2 used for generations in Japan to prevent recurrence and eliminate miserable side effects. So there's a lot of specificity in there, working 4 times better, used in Japan, used for generations in Japan, used to prevent recurrence and eliminate side effects. Very specific stuff, which gives it, a boost of credibility and believability. And then, of course, anytime you add a mechanism, right, a way something works, you make it more believable. Excess pounds vanish when you ignite these newly discovered fat-burning cells, right? Mm-hmm. So many people just saying, lose weight, this will help you lose weight, this will help you lose weight. But when you give it a mechanism, all of a sudden it becomes a lot more powerful, believable, and interesting, right? What are fat-burning? What are these newly discovered fat-burning cells? And sometimes you can create a mechanism. I did that here for this, it was an alternative health newsletter. And I noticed that a lot of the things that helped fight disease were kind of ways of tricking the disease, right? It would take advantage, for instance, of the fact that cancer needs a lot of sugar to grow.
Right.
So a way of fighting cancer was to kind of deprive it of that sugar. Arthritis is very inflammatory. Right? So if you can cut down on the inflammation, you cut down on the arthritis. So that the headline became, beat any disease by taking advantage of its hidden weakness. Then we talked about the historical, right? Prescribed by Hippocrates in ancient Greece, scientists now admit it beats depression better than Prozac. So you've got the comparison thing, and you've got the historical thing. Both used in this. Again, this, we covered that one. Throwing in movie stars, celebrities, is always good for increasing credibility and increasing the amount of attention something gets, right? Movie star trick makes you look 10 pounds thinner, and years younger. And I think an element of believability that a lot of people leave out is trust, right? Trust is huge. When you don't trust something, no matter how much proof I give you, if you don't trust me, no matter how much proof I give you, you're not going to buy from me. And if you do trust someone, you'll pretty much buy anything from them, right? So how do you generate trust, right? Interestingly, studies have found that the simpler something is, the more trustworthy it is, the more believable it is. Because we distrust complexity, because we feel, okay, things are kind of hidden from me, so I need to be careful. But when something is simple, we see it clearly and we trust it more. We trust people when we show them that we're like them, right? We share their beliefs. We share their language. And by language, I don't just mean English. I mean how we talk about things, right? The terminology we use, the jargon, the way we express things. And we share our background, right? Whether we grew up in the same place or, we were raised in poverty or whatever it is, we have a like background to them. But even more importantly, in some ways of showing that you're like them is to show that you like them, right? You appreciate them. You want to make them feel good about themselves. Dan Kennedy is a master of this, right? A master of kind of cheerily, you're an entrepreneur, you're special, nobody understands you, right? You can say it's quite an accomplishment that you're reading this, right? Most people skip over this. Most people haven't gotten that far, right? You're obviously dedicated if you've read this far. Empathize without, and empathize in a real way, not in an artificial, manipulative way, but, really feel and understand their pain and express that you feel and understand their pain, their hopes and their dreams. And show you have their best interests at heart. And you do that without a lot of hype, without a lot of BS, right? I tell people to write like they're writing to their mother, right? You wouldn't BS your mother. You'd sincerely want to help her. You'd sincerely want her to, take advantage of what's best for her. And you'd want to do everything you can to convince her to do that. But as soon as you start copywriting to her, as soon as you start, doing manipulative stuff, she's just going to roll her eyes, say, don't copyright with me, Sonny. Give good information, advice, guidance. If there are flaws, admit them, right? Look, this may not be for everyone, right? This takes some time. You need to be a little dedicated to go through this or whatever it is, right? It takes an investment. And then just do what trustworthy content does. What do you find trustworthy, right? What do you believe? What sites, what people, right? So look and sound like an article, like a report, like a book, right? Rich, you were a master of this with your manifestos, right? Mm-hmm. That was such incredibly trustworthy content and clearly had, our best interests at heart. Give real advice and service, use seals, certificates, other icons of trust, right? Protected by, security, your credit card is safe kinds of things. And reveal your why and what your mission is, right? People trust people when they say, look, this is why I'm doing this. Yeah, I'm selling you something, right? But I'm selling you it because I want to help you. I'm on a mission to, get as many people as I can doing this, right? And the other thing is we trust specialization and focus, right? We trust the guy whose focus is, who's a mechanic who specializes in Porsches. We trust him with our Porsche more than we do a general mechanic. And we trust, if we have a brain tumor, we don't want a general practitioner. We don't even want a regular surgeon. We want a brain surgeon, and preferably one that specializes in whatever kind of brain tumor we have.
Yes.
And so don't try to be all things to all people, right? You have a lot more credibility when you're a specialist. This was a piece I did for Boardroom that reeked of credibility because we had tips from people that really were, this is what they did for a living, right? Pioneering pharmacist and health guru uncovers natural cure for fatigue. Veteran airline pilot reveals the best seat on the plane. Winner of over 450 contests and sweepstakes reveals her winning secrets. Contractor lets you in on home remodeling secrets. See, each one, right? The credibility first, the trust first, because, this is a guy that knows this stuff. This is just a little bio box from one of my magalogs. And there's like a dozen trust elements in here. We'll start on the left, right? A little bit of gray in his hair, right? Oh, okay, trustworthy. He's not some kid. his eyes. He's looking right at you. Of course, the stethoscope,
Mm-hmm.
the white coat. He's Robert Rowan, MD.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor tomorrow, genius, MD. Can't say that enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they call him, right? It's not like I'm calling him. It's not like he calls himself. There's some credibility there. And then down here, if you can see, they're looking for a trusted guide, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying he's trusted. And then I love anytime someone is a doctor to other doctors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the guru to the gurus, like Rich is. You know, that just gives such credibility. So in this one, hundreds of physicians have sought training from Dr. Rowan. And of course, probably somewhere else I say, and they send him, you know, the patients that they have trouble. Can't beat that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you find you still don't have the credibility what you would want, right? Sometimes you have to look at your promise and just promise less, right? If you're promising people are going to make $1 million, you need a heck of a lot of believability to get them to buy a course or to coach, you know, let you coach them, pay you to coach them to do that. So maybe you're better off, promising less, 500,000, $250,000, 100,000, 50,000. You know, you might be better off proving that you can make them 50,000 than, you know, saying you can make them 100,000, but not proving that sufficiently. So don't be afraid to look into promising a little less, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about getting to that, you know, into that sold box. A little more advanced stuff, if you want, I can go into, but there is another dimension to this with it, which is the dimension of interest, right? You can have great promise. You can have great, you know, believability, but if your copy isn't interesting, no one's going to read it. No one's going to be bored to death, no matter how much promise and believability you have. So the interest is what.
I'm curious how that interacts with it, because like there's definitely like there's this like, I'm not sure the right way to kind of articulate this, but that there can often be like where the promise is solid but not exciting.
Right.
Right? Like it's believable, potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
But doesn't have that, like, you know, one of the challenges that I would say, like, that I feel, right, is that I feel very confident in my own ability to persuade someone once I have the, like, runway. And so the reports were really easy for me from a standpoint of being able to share a lot of good information and move mm-hmm. someone. Where I would struggle, because I don't really consider myself a copywriter, is like figuring out the way to open something up that grabs someone by the lapels to pull them in, you know, and yet still be believable. And, you know, like, so I'm really curious, like, how much interest and can, like, kind of help cross that chasm of, like, getting engagement even when the promise is not, like, the promise is there, but it's not, like, overtly powerful.
Yeah, and certainly, Rich, can I take off sharing?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there you are. I think these things also relate to each other, right? When you talk about the promise not being exciting, well, by bringing in interest, right, you make the promise exciting and you make the copy more interesting. And I think you just have to look at, it's almost like you have to look at, okay, here are the things that people are interested in. Here are the things that get people's attention. How can I make them relevant to what I've got here, right? One of the main ones is change, right? We're conditioned from the savannah to be on the lookout for, oh, that bush is different than it was. There maybe our enemies are there, or maybe a saber-toothed tiger, trampled on that bush. I better be careful, right? So anytime there's Oren Klaff is very articulate about this, right?
Yeah.
Economic change, social change, technological change. Hey, whoa, stuff I got to know about, right? Stuff that we think is true that is not true, right? That gets our attention. That gets our interest. I don't like that. Could be very harmful to me if I believe something that's not true. I don't want to look stupid. Plus, could cost me a lot of money if I think that something is true that isn't. Could cost me my health if I think something's good for me and it isn't, right? Or it could make my life better. If I think chocolate cake is bad for me and it turns out it's good for me, well, I'll have a much happier life.
Yes.
So that, right? That gets my attention.
And what do you think is more pronounced these days? Do you think, is the copy that comes across your desk, is it more hypey or more boring? Which is it?
More hypey or more boring?
Which is it in need of?
I think it's more boring. I think it probably is, hypey and lacks believability, but I think it's mostly boring. I think, and increasingly now with AI, because AI is kind of inherently pasteurized, homogenized kind of copy. And if you're not really careful with it, don't edit it well, don't prompt it well, what comes out is almost by definition, kind of boring. So it's more important than ever to, be able to add that humanness, to be able to add those elements of,
I took copious notes while you were talking.
Oh, good. That's very flattering. I think part of the problem is, that just a mindset problem. I think, first of all, there's a mindset of it's just sort of being on automatic pilot when people write. And I do the same thing if I'm not careful, right? It's just like, I got to get this down. I'm writing this and people are going to read it because I'm writing it. Well, or they're going to listen to it. And they're not necessarily. You've got to have the mindset of, I got to grab that person by the lapels and pull them in and hold on to them for dear life and do everything. Arthur Johnson likened it to, it's got to be like a 3-ring circus. Yeah. It's like, dun, 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 look at this, dancing lions in ring 3, right? Near the jugglers. And you've got to, and look what's coming up. Soon the clowns are going to be coming out, right? Obviously you don't want to be clownish and foolish, but you want to have that mindset of, God, like John Benson. He's always working in his copy. What's coming up? I got tips coming up. I got good stuff coming up for you. Clayton Makepeace says you got to sell them as much as you sell them on the product. You've also got to sell them on keeping reading.
Right.
So I think it's partly that people don't have that mindset. And I think, people have the mindset of, I don't know, they just go into a writer mindset when they write, like they're writing a book report in school. The thing followed by rather than, like, if you had to persuade your wife that you want to do something with her, go to a certain restaurant or go to the movies, a certain movie, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't do that like writing. You don't do that. Oh, what kind of an opening should I have? How do I use this technique? And, I'm going to say, dear, I believe that we should go to the, no, you would just be like, look, hon, you love these kind of movies and this is that kind of movie and you're going to love it. And your natural inner persuader would come out. And I think people just sort of put that aside when they write. They forget all about that natural ability they have to persuade. That they would, like, if they were talking to you, like a lot of times when I'm coaching people, I just say, just sell me on the thing. Right. And once they get over the awkwardness of that, right, they'll try to sell me on the thing. Right. And it'll be much better than, I said, why didn't you write that? Right. Why on earth did you write, new killer thing will make you, whatever.
Got it. And where do you find you use this the most? this this grid? Like, when do you pull it out the most? When working with whom and what? And like, when does it seem to be the most useful?
I mean, to some extent, it's kind of embedded in my head, to look for believability and to look for promise. But, I think especially when I'm evaluating other people's copy and it's not as powerful as it could be, right? It's lacking believability and it's lacking, the promises are just not there. They're obvious. They're just sort of listed. They're just lying there on the page. They're not, how, you read Gene Schwartz,
right,
and it's like, roses, so many roses will be exploding on your rose. I mean, it's like, and, each bush will have 5 branches. Each of those branches will have 100 roses. Your house will be filled with your neighbors will be slack-jawed in amazement he's so brilliant at bringing things to life like that. People just don't do that. This thing will give you a lot of roses, thousands of roses. It's a great product. You should buy it. So sometimes I just read Gene Schwartz and I'm like, okay, now I see what's possible.
Right.
Like you could take a damn, fertilizer, which is literally, crap, and, make something like this out of it. I mean, I wanted to buy it and I don't even have a rose bush.
And so what, in the interest and story component, what does that include without going maybe completely down that track?
Well, the story component, I think, is so huge because look, that's what people want, right? You know what they say, we're hardwired for story, right? That's how people learn. That's how juries decide a case, right? They don't go, guilty. Oh, there's this much guiltiness. Oh, there's this much innocence. Let me weigh these two. No, they just go, I believe the defense story. I don't believe the prosecutor's story. I don't see him murdering his girlfriend. I don't see that story in my head, right? So you want to get really good with story and you want to build story, not just like, let me tell you a story, right? This is one day he was sitting in his room and discovered this amazing thing, and here's how he did it, obstacle and obstacle. But you can embed stories into your copy in so many ways, right? The classic example for me is, where you could say, the study found out that this herb was effective in, 8 out of 10 cases or something like that, right? As opposed to, okay, scientists at the University of Oklahoma wanted to see if this herb really lived up to all the hype about it. So they took 2 groups and they divided one group. They gave the herb to the other group. They gave a sugar pill that looked like, it had the herb in it. And then when they came back in 6 months, they were astounded to find, right, that so it turns into a story of people with people doing things, right?
Right.
You want people in your copy as much as possible, not what they call nominalizations, right?
And is there anything that relates to this that we didn't cover that we should?
I think curiosity is huge. Maybe that's just because something I've used for so long and became so facile with it boardroom. But, curiosity is a huge motivator, but it's a little less visible, right? We know people love story. We know people love, change. But curiosity is, I've seen people buy books and courses just for one little bullet that they want to know the answer to, right? So if you can learn how to give away just enough of something and just leave enough of it out that they've got to get, the thing that you're selling in order to find it out, right? Like I've signed up for courses, just because there was one little piece of something that was missing that I wanted to get. So curiosity, just huge. Make people curious. Make people curious about what's coming next. Make people curious about, so many times people destroy curiosity by, here's what this course is all about, and here's everything that's in it. And it's like, now I don't have to, I don't have to get the course. I know what's in it, right? So you have to be really careful.
How much would you say I mean, I would assume a lot of it. I assume we're talking about, for the most part here, we're talking about copy that's on a page that is attempting to sell, something. And while I think a lot of it is applicable, I'm wondering if it all is or not, as it relates to like an ad that's driving traffic to an.
Yeah, well, that's where curiosity really comes in,
Yeah,
right? You want people like,
yeah,
I gotta just pushing the buttons got to be an easy way for them to satisfy their curiosity. And of course, that's a big mistake people make, right? They try to sell things when all they have to do is just to get people to click the button, right?
Right.
That's all we want, just for them to go to the next step, to go to the video.
In the right frame of mind.
Preferably in the right frame of mind, yes.
Yeah. And in competitive markets, it's often difficult to stand out and be believable.
Yes, sometimes you really have to just start out with, how can I position myself differently? Right? It's hard to be it's hard to compete on their own turf, right? You've got to start a new game, right? Right? The positioning thing, right? It's hard to get up on the ladder. Just find a new ladder, right? We're not like this. We're this. We're a whole new thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm just thinking like of a friend of mine who coaches, and he sent me like a text a couple weeks ago where it was like all these people that are coaches to coaches, like they're all guaranteeing, the ad is like, I guarantee you 20 new clients in the next month or you don't pay, or I guarantee you 100, right? Like, and it's like, how do I compete with this? And it's like, yeah, that's difficult.
I mean, this is just off the wall idea, right? Yeah. I would do that. I guarantee you nothing. You want a guarantee? Go to one of those people, right? I work with people that put into practice what I say, and they're responsible. They take their own responsibility. I can give you all the tools in the world. You don't use them, right? Your coaching is not good. No, you don't want guarantees. Go elsewhere. You kind of use that, right? You turn it, lemons into lemonade, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah. Well, I still get clients without a guarantee.
Yeah. And it's a proof element in a certain way. I don't need a guarantee. Right?
Yep. You got to use what you got and use what others have against them.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's hoist on their own petard, as they say.
Yeah.
I think this is a separate episode, right? But that kind of strategy is what's lacking today in copy, right? These days it's so much about the words, it's so much about the script, it's so much about AI generating things, that what's lacking is that thinking that, okay, this is my competition, this is how they position themselves. How do I strategically position myself in order to get the best results? Right? How do I use their guarantees against them, like we just did? How do I start a new ladder?
Why do you say that that's missing? I'm just curious.
Because increasingly anyone with AI can generate
copy,
right? Just like in the 80s or whatever, anyone with a computer could do layout, and they did, right? Yeah. So that's kind of why it's lacking, I think, is part of it. And I think part of it is just, I don't mean to sound like some old, railing against the lack of craftsmanship, but it's kind of a lack of craftsmanship, lack of people being trained in thinking, and instead they're being trained in, hacks, formulas.
Yeah.
And you don't need strategy for a formula, for a template.
Right.
You got the template. You know what this sort of thing sort of sounds like. And if you don't, AI will help you make it sound like it should sound like.
Got it. Cool. Well, I think this is very instructive. Is there anything that you feel like we're leaving out if we ended here, or is this pretty comprehensive?
Yeah, no, I think I could go on and on about any aspect of this, but I think we've covered.
Well, so with this grid, right? And
I forgot my favorite Jim Rutz quote. Someone asked him that at an interview, and he said, "Yeah, I think I've already said more than I know."
What do you suggest people do? So they have this information that you just shared, right? Now let's say that they have like a funnel or something that's underperforming, right? Like, should they look at, like, should they go section by section and look at, like, how believable is it? How exciting is it? Should they just be looking at the headline? Like, what's the process?
All those things. I think start with the whole thing altogether, right? How believable is it, right? And if it's not as believable as you'd like it to be, what are the elements? Is it missing trust? Is it missing proof? What kinds of proof could I add? How about the benefit, right? Is it, does it have enough benefit? Not just like, have I piled on enough, promises, but do they have impact? Do they have relevance? Are these, things that are going to, really turn someone's head in terms of a promise? Or is it just things that they're going to go, oh, that again? Yeah, make $1 million, whatever. I've seen that before.
Right.
And if so, how do you dramatize it? How do you bring it to life? Like Schwartz brought those rose bushes to life.
And so you would do that for the whole piece, and then would you ever do it looking at like just the headline, looking at just the subheads, or
Sure. Sure. Although for a headline, it can be a little. I think sometimes it's funny. People get it's a little misunderstood. They want the headline to like have everything in it, to be like a whole sales message. And you know as well as I do what Joe Sugarman said, right? The only purpose of a headline is to get you to read the next part. The next purpose of that part to get you to read the next part. So but sometimes it is good to get, more proof in a headline, because that's what gets people like, wow, Harvard Medical School. What? This must be Nobel Prize. This thing won the Nobel Prize. The theory behind this won the Nobel Prize. That can be very powerful. It can just enough to transform a headline from a heard it before promise to something that's actually different.
Got it. How much of this would you say carries forward into getting someone to stop scrolling?
I think aspects of it, sure, right? A benefit that's got proof and, then trust, believability built into it, that kind of gets someone's attention. But certainly the things we've talked about, story, right? Farmer who saved his son by, using a spice, adding, the credibility of, anything you can, right? Is it celebrity related? Is it politically related? Look what Agora does, right? Constantly.
Right.
Right. Relating it to what's going on. Because that's what's in people's heads, right? That's what people are interested in now.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, I think this has been very illustrative and helpful. And I think that this is something that I touched upon a long time ago, just about this, this conflict, you could say, between believability and promise. The bigger the promise, the less believable. The more believable, generally, the more boring the promise. And that this seems to be a continual struggle. So I appreciate, that's why when you first brought it up to me, I was excited to hear what your perspective on it was.
I think that awareness that when you raise the promise level, you've got to raise the believability level, right? You can't raise this without raising this, right? I believe you can make me $50 tomorrow. You could show me how to make $50. But you tell me I can show you how to make $1 million tomorrow. Whoops, got to get, believability up there because you've raised the bar.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Oh, pleasure as always.
And just where's the best place for people to follow you?
Speakingofwriting.com is a website.
Speaking of writing?
Speaking of writing. Yeah, speakingofwriting.com.
All right.
And you can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and all the usual
What's
places.
what's your favorite social media site? Where do you post most?
I've been doing a lot on Twitter just because I just kind of like the immediacy of it, and I like the, it can be relatively short.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. But I think my favorite is kind of LinkedIn, just for the, it's a little more professional.
It is, for sure.
For sure.
Well, I hope you come back sometime.
Oh, I'm always glad. To come on, Rich.
Cool. Well, thanks, David. I appreciate it, and look forward to you coming back sometime.
All right. Thanks. Take care.